Hi there, and welcome to the Human Infusion Project's Whole Brain Relationships class. Over the course of this class, we're going to go over how the state of your brain and the state of your emotional nervous system can help you to feel more calm, confident, and connected, both at work and in your personal life. My name's Jen, for any of you meeting me for the first time today, and I hope you're feeling motivated and ready to learn and get to it, because this is going to be an interesting and information-packed class. But I'm going to do my best to keep it fairly simple, lighthearted, and deliver it to you in manageable, bite-sized pieces. Now, if you haven't already, I encourage you to check out the Human Infusion Project's overview presentation when you have time. In it, you can learn more about the project itself, learn a little bit more about me and my background, as well as learn about the mental wellness assistance grant that your class participation is contributing to. So thank you for that. So if you're here today, it may be because you're either close to burning out or close to losing out on some aspect of your life. Or you want to make some changes so that your personal life and your work life can coexist. Maybe you're trying to work less and have more of a social life. Or maybe you want to be in a more intimate relationship, but you can't seem to find the time to even start dating. Or perhaps you love what you do for a living and you want to make more of an impact at work, but then wonder if that requires sacrificing your family or friends in order to do it. Or maybe you're pretty aware and working on all of that and just want to find out why, although you are making an effort. Why is it that you either can't stick with it or you keep circling back around and getting the same results? By the end of this class, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to see your brain, your behavior, and the effort that goes along with changing it very differently. In this class, you'll learn that there are some guiding factors that are happening invisibly in your brain, behind the curtains of your awareness, so to speak. Some features of your brain that are the reason why you keep repeating certain emotional responses, or keep repeating certain choices and behaviors, or keep seeing repeated outcomes. Brain features that once you understand how they work, you can instead start training them to work for you and in your favor. I know at times it can feel a little bit like we're puppets on a string, right? Without any real control over our life. Our habitual responses and behaviors can be that powerful. But by the end of this class, you'll be able to see who or what the puppeteer really is and how you can retrain it to get the diverse and integrated life that you really want. Now, as a reminder from the written introduction, this whole brain relationships course is part of stage 1 of the integrative change framework. The stage where we start to understand the lay of the land, so to speak. Understand what we're dealing with in the brain, begin to think more flexibly, and begin training our brains to look at and consider our behaviors from a different angle. In this class, you're also going to learn about how the brain and body develops patterns in response to stress, so you can understand why the process of making lasting change is naturally uncomfortable. This understanding of the brain, the body, and how they shape our relationships will hopefully increase your willingness to work through the initial and necessary discomfort that emotional recentering and lasting integrative life change requires. If you want an integrated and whole life where work and relationships complement each other instead of compete with each other, you have to develop the use of an integrated and whole brain. And realize that integration is not about sacrifice, blending, or a dilution of either aspect of your brain or life, but it's about a unification of two distinct parts, which in tandem creates personal power, inner peace, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. We need you and what you uniquely offer out there. But we need you emotionally centered with a strong integrated brain and more flexible thinking, So not only can you use your intellect and skills to serve with more impact, but you can do so while enjoying your own life as well. I designed this course to summarize in easier to understand terms the key points that I've found to be pivotal in centering, moderating, or optimally experiencing your emotions and getting your stress response system back to a calmer default setting. This is the foundation of emotional and relational intelligence. Everything you learn here is based on what I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years about brain and body science, as well as theoretical and applied psychology. And the concepts that I'm presenting are very well researched, much more comprehensive, and deserving of further study. However, I'm choosing to relay the information in simplified terms for easier understanding and quicker application. So by taking detailed and complex information and breaking it down into practical bite-sized segments and then relaying it through story and metaphor, my hope is that you can more quickly apply concepts, start changing and reshaping your brain, and at a minimum, manage your stress much more effectively. This class will be covered in 4 parts. And if this is your first introduction to a class of this kind, sit back and take each section slowly. New information, especially if it opposes a belief you're already comfortable with, can be challenging for your brain to take on. You're going to learn more about that later. But if you are open, you may find yourself thinking about some things in an entirely new way. Now remember, you can always pause this recording so you can think about a section, replay it, or go over it again. And the attached ebook is a summary of all the highlights. So although note-taking is helpful, try not to get too caught up in it, the first time through at least. Just be open, listen, and maybe jot down a few things as you go. And I'll do my best to go slowly. You're not expected to become a brain change ninja just after one coverage of the material. Understanding of anything often comes with repetition and reflection. So just relax and take in what you can. Then pause and replay the areas if you need to for deeper understanding and self-application. So let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover in the class, and then we'll get to it. So in part 1, we'll start with some basic understanding about emotion and feelings and talk about what emotional self-regulation really means. In part 2, we'll go over some general key concepts about how the brain operates. And in parts 3 and 4, we'll talk about 6 key areas of the brain that I believe we can influence, and then take a look at how the entire system works together, running examples of what healthy stress response looks like, how limiting beliefs and unwanted patterns get created and can impact our relationships, and how trauma or adverse experiences can throw the whole thing off kilter. And then before we wrap up, we'll talk about next steps, or what the heck do we do with all this great new information? But my overall goal for this class is to help you to see and understand that what we refer to as personal growth, emotional intelligence, or emotional self-regulation is fundamentally tied to 3 things. Number 1, the interruption, challenge, and diversification of some of your unconscious thinking patterns. Number 2, the retraining of your brain and body's stress response system so that it aligns with your current environment and situation. And number 3, the strengthening of your brain as an integrated whole. Now, many mindset practitioners only address the unconscious thinking patterns without diversifying the strength and the use of the brain, or without showing you what needs to be done to make it physiologically stick. Thought pattern change can begin in a moment, but for your brain to adapt and adopt your new patterns as its default way of operating takes time and repetition. So why don't more practitioners tell you this? Well, In a fast-paced world focused on efficiency, many people believe that they don't have the time. So many people repeatedly look for quick fixes for temporary relief instead of lasting and transferable change. But how much time do we waste in worry or recovering from exhaustion or from redoing a task because we were distracted and couldn't focus? And how much time is spent on illness, zoning out on TV, or recovering from burnout or relational breakups? We have the time. But I'm also not shying away from telling you the facts about what it takes because, well, I'm betting you're smart. And if you're watching this, it means you take your well-being and your relationships seriously. And people like you are quite capable of doing things and succeeding at challenges that are hard. I'm not going to sell you a quick fix because I know you're capable of doing more. And that capability is what will get you the sustainable, integrative, and transferable results that you're really looking for. In other words, I don't need to treat you with kid gloves or package the realities of growth work in a lot of fluff. I'm going to treat you like the adults that you are and give it to you as simply, but as straightforwardly as I can. So back to these three components of integrative and lasting personal growth. If it helps, think of these components sort of like a software update combined with a hardware update. And for both types of update, lasting integrative whole brain change is possible once you fully understand what it takes to make it happen. So let's get started. In part one, we're going to discuss the purpose of our stress response system or what it's designed to do. And then we're going to go over what emotions and feelings really are and why we need them. We'll also talk about emotional self-regulation, like what does it actually mean and look like to become emotionally regulated? And how does the emotional response system actually develop in early life? And then right before we wrap up this section, we'll go over the cortical hemispheres, as well as three general conceptual functions of the brain. So let's get going with the purpose of our stress response system. Our stress response system is also called the stimulus response or our emotional response system. And I'm going to get right to it and start you off with a fact that may surprise many of you to learn. Your stress response or emotional response system is not supposed to be on or running all the time. In other words, it's designed to operate intermittently. And this applies not only to the emotions that we find uncomfortable, but it applies to our pleasant emotional states as well. Now, for those of you who believe that you're an extrovert or an introvert and sometimes feel pressured to act or behave a certain way according to social expectations, you may be relieved to hear this. Our bodies are not designed to feel happy, fulfilled, or loving towards people all the time. Isn't that kind of nice to know? It's totally okay and natural to feel just neutral sometimes. However, we're also not designed to feel sad, angry, or anxious all the time either. For each of those emotional states or moods that I just described, I want to emphasize the words all the time. And as we'll learn here today, every emotional response has a very specific purpose or a job to do. And we're designed to experience all of our emotions. The problem lies in how frequently, how intensely, and how much time we spend in each emotional state, what environment we're in when they're activated, and what default state we rebound back to. Now, those factors are far more critical. In this first video, we're going to focus on what we refer to as the stress response system, or how our brains and bodies respond when the brain experiences something that is conflicting or different. That's the basic definition of stress, something that is conflicting or different. This response system is designed to protect us from being killed, meaning prevent our life from physically, literally being ended. Like when someone runs a red light and almost hits me, or someone jumps out of an alley and puts a gun to my head. Those are imminent and actual threats to my physical life that trigger me to either fight or run. But on an everyday basis, does this really happen? Well, maybe if you live in a dangerous area of a big city or in a war-torn country. But for most of us in this century and decade, on a daily basis, not really. But over time, this stress response system state has adapted to become our baseline default system, and an amplified one at that. For many people, this readiness for fight or flight state either runs constantly in the background, or we've unconsciously found ways to avoid dealing with it altogether. We distract ourselves with video games or online searching. We keep ourselves constantly busy, or we numb out with food or alcohol. We spend more time in our intellect, overthinking, and getting it reinforced by achievement. We've become addicted to or overly dependent on many different things in our lives. And addiction in its simplest form is defined like this: anything that's when it's present in our lives has a disruptive quality to it, and or when absent from our lives causes intense physical or mental suffering. Yikes. Anything come to mind? Anyone else recovering from addiction? I mean, I am. I'm fortunate to not have been hooked on one of the big five: drugs, alcohol, food, gambling, or sex. But my system used to physiologically be addicted or dependent on achievement, activity, thinking, and an incessant need to know or need to find answers. Those all kind of sound like strange things to be called addictions, don't they? And you may be wondering, well, what's wrong with intellect, learning, thinking, and achievement? Nothing. But if it's where you spend all of your time, you're only accessing half your brain. And the half that you're not experiencing is the same half that's responsible for creativity, innovation, wonder, play, empathy, and emotional connection to other humans. Are those things that any of us really want to live completely without? No, of course not. Not to mention the impact that operating in constant fight or flight has on our health, or the fact that a part of our brain is getting weaker because we're not using it. Yeah, that happens. We're going to get to that. But the point that I want to get across here is that addiction or dependence on anything develops when we spend too much time doing one thing without change, or we don't have enough diverse ways to meet our needs. More on that last part later. Now, despite how our bodies may feel some days, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that most people on a regular basis are not actually trying to kill us. Even people who yell, criticize, and shoot off some inflammatory remark or opposing opinion, are they trying to kill you? Will it end your life in that moment? I mean, maybe they want to kill your idea or opinion, and that may be mentally challenging. But will you physically die because of it? Of course not. But have you paid attention to your body, your thoughts, and your urge to respond when that happens? I mean, think about it. Now that children's rhyme makes a little more sense, the one that says, sticks and stones can break your bones, and that words will never physically hurt you or kill you. Words. So why does my brain and body respond as if they just might? And why have we gotten so used to operating this way that sometimes it just feels like this is just the way I am? You're about to find out. So let's start with some basics that just may stretch your mind a bit. Stretch it, as in most of us never had this explained to us growing up. Why? Because our leap in understanding just came in the last 20 years or so as brain science has developed. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. See you in the next video.